to show you this quote from Aristotle so that you could see how these words, at least to some extent, sounded in their context. The head of the household rules over both wife and children, and he rules over both as free members of the household. His rule over his wife is like that of a statesman over fellow citizens. The male is naturally fitter to command than the female, except where there is a departure from nature. So basically, Aristotle here likens the husband's headship over his wife to that of the mayor of a city over a city. Now, she's a citizen of the city, so at least I'll give him that much credit, that the wife is at least able to vote, as it were. But the mayor is the one who basically runs the city. Now, obviously Paul, in my opinion, raises the role of women above Aristotle. But my point in showing this is to make the case that when Paul says that the husband is head of the wife, he is acquiescing to culture, or he is assimilating to culture, that this is not a distinctly Christian position. Now, that doesn't mean that it isn't God's will. Maybe God put that into creation. Maybe God built it into the creation to where Aristotle gets it right, and it is just as much transcultural as anything else. But at least it raises the question, to what extent is this assumption that the husband is the head of the wife, to what extent is it a cultural kind of instruction, or to what extent is it distinctly Christian? And, as I was just saying a second ago, even if we accept that, this is not probably to be taken as an exceptionless statement. Even Aristotle says that there are situations where the woman is fitter to command than the man. And so, just because Paul says something like the husband is the head of the wife, wouldn't have necessarily meant, even in his world, that he meant that in every case. And of course, then this is the place where we mention Priscilla and Aquila, where most of the time when Paul mentions Priscilla and Aquila, he mentions her name first, which is somewhat intriguing in a patriarchal world. Now, if you mention a woman first in a husband-wife pair today, that might not be that big of a deal. Although, it usually means something. I have 4 sisters, and it's Denny and Patricia, it's Eddie and Juanita, it's Sharon and Delbert, and it's Dwayne and Debbie. It's Sharon and Delbert because she's definitely the one who doesn't wear the pants in that family, but wears the pants of the family. She doesn't actually wear pants, she wears dresses, but along with the long hair. But she actually, ironically, is the dominant personality in that family. And when I refer to them, we all refer to them as Sharon and Delbert, because she is definitely the more, you know her, you notice her, you don't notice him in a room, you notice her. And so it seems significant to me that Paul consistently says Priscilla and Aquila when he mentions the two. Now, he doesn't always. In fact, interestingly enough, in 1 Corinthians he doesn't. 1 Corinthians he says Aquila and Priscilla, which might be an indication that there's a women thing going on at Corinth that is requiring Paul to kind of, whoa there, lasso this situation a little bit. But anyway, so even though Paul says the husband is the head of the wife, we shouldn't assume that that was an absolute statement without exception, even for Paul. Okay, moving right along. Again, I've said this, nothing uniquely Christian in the ancient world with the idea that the husband is the head of the wife. So is this creational? Now, it's possible. I've got to be fair. It's just because it is cultural doesn't mean that it isn't universally cultural. Maybe God has built it into the creation to where the husband should almost always be the head of the wife. Is it a product of the fall? According to Genesis 3, it is. Genesis 3 does not present the fact that Eve was created second as an indication of her subordination to Adam. Genesis 3 explicitly says that your desire will be to your husband as a consequence of Eve's sin. And therefore, the presumption is that that was not the case before the fall. That'll become important when we get to 1 Timothy. As I've mentioned, this is never an absolute thing in Aristotle, and so I don't think we have any reason to take it as absolute. That is, absolute meaning as without exception in Paul. Is it nature? Are women by nature less fit to lead? I suspect a lot of it is cultural. A lot of it, I assume, is how a person's raised. In the ancient world, for example, women were not educated. I mean, it's only in recent times that women get to go to school. Of course, rich women always have the exception. There are always the Mulans, you know, that managed to do what men did, or that sat in on their brother's education. You know, there have always been the women who found a way to be educated. But in Paul's world, of course, women weren't educated. And so that's something of, you know, when Aristotle says the woman is less fit to command by nature, well, it's hard to lift weights if you never lift your arms. But anyway, so the question is this true by nature, or is this a matter of culture? Certainly, it's not the case today. There are plenty of women who are more capable of leading than men. Let me tell you right now, my wife, if you want a second grade class or a seventh grade class to be under control, you want her in there. You don't want me in there. She is built to command. She is, in fact, I won't tell you what elementary school she's in, but she's working at as a social worker at one of the elementary schools in town. And they don't send students to the principal at that school. They send them to her because she is a better leader when it comes to those kinds of things than he is. And so it's simply, again, if you want to believe the Bible's errant, then go ahead and say that the Bible teaches that women are always less fit to command or less fit to lead than a man. It's simply not true. If that's what the Bible says, then the Bible's an error. Women are often, individual women are often fitter to command than men are. I mean, I use this illustration sometimes. Let's say that we're on a plane, and somehow or another, there's just two of us, me and a woman who actually knows how to fly planes. Let's say she's got a pilot's license. And let's say that the plane, that for some reason the pilot has gone narcoleptic, you know, and the plane is crashing. I'm not going to say, step aside, I have male genitals, you know, and go try to fly the plane. Now, that would be stupid. I don't know how to fly a plane. I mean, and God's not stupid. There are many women who are fitter to lead than other men. And it just boggles the mind to think, nope, the man always has to be the one who's the leader, even when he's completely incompetent because he has male genitals. That is just stupid. Is God stupid? And yet that's the way a lot of Christians, I think, treat this whole issue of male headship.